the Nigerian economy took a dive in 2016, it dealt a heavy blow to the nation. The administration of President Muhammadu Buhari, bothered by the decline in economic indices that saw the country get into its worst recession in decades, had the daunting task of changing the narrative and repositioning the economy on the path of growth. It came up with a medium-term plan, the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan (ERGP), that was launched on April 5, 2017 by President Muhammadu Buhari. Government, through the ERGP, harvested inputs from all segments of the country to produce an all-inclusive development plan that will pull the economy out of recession and set it on the path to sustainable growth and development. For the Minister of Budget and National Planning, Senator Udoma Udoma, the ERGP was designed to tackle constraints to growth, leverage the power of the private sector, promote national cohesion and social inclusion, and allow markets to function and uphold core values.
In the words of President Buhari, which actually illustrates what the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan is all about, he said, "We grow what we eat, consume what we make, and produce what we use." So that is the focus of the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan. That is the focus of Nigerian economic policy. Because when you do that, you create jobs for Nigerians. You expand the productivity of the Nigerian economy.
The ERGP targeted to have an economy that boasts of low inflation, stable exchange rates alongside a diversified economy and inclusive growth. Strategies were developed for implementation to achieve the main objectives of the ERGP. 12 of those strategies were prioritized based on their importance to the success of the plan. Restore oil production to 2.2 million barrels per day and reach 2.5 million barrels per day by the year 2020. Privatize selected assets. Accelerate non-oil revenue generation. Drastically cut costs. Align monetary, trade and fiscal policies. Expand infrastructure, especially power, roads and rail. Revamp the 4 existing refineries. Improve the ease of doing business. Expand social investment programs, deliver an agricultural transformation, accelerate implementation of National Industrial Revolution Plan using special economic zones, focus on priority sectors in order to generate jobs, promote exports, boost growth and upgrade skills. These give birth to the first 3 sets of focus labs.
We are determined to change Nigeria from an import-dependent country to a producing nation. We must become a nation where we grow what we eat and consume what we produce. We must strive to have a strong naira and productive economy.
Well, the ERGP Focus Labs are a tool that we're using to deliver big, fast results from the ERGP implementation. It will deliver very good results, positive results for the country, because it has been, we have seen that it has worked out well for Malaysia, for Qatar, and even Russia is using the ERGP Focus Labs at this time. It's a tool that helps us to concentrate in a particular area in a sector, to solve problems, to realize investments that are identified for the sector.
The first set of focus labs were set up in the critical areas of agriculture and transportation, power and gas, as well as manufacturing and processing.
These 3 sectors cover essential, very important aspects of our lives in the economy. When you talk of manufacturing and processing, that is where the employment is also. You need to manufacture. You need to have the industries back in operation for them to employ massively. When you talk of processing, you need to have the industries back You need to have solid mineral sector working at good capacity to be able to employ so many of our youths. Power and gas, of course, you know that our power sector is still having challenges, and so power was necessarily included as one of the three important focus areas. Same thing with agric and transport. So these three are somehow interlinked. You cannot take one out completely without having bearing on the rest. And that's the nexus between these three focus labs.
The administration of President Muhammadu Buhari also set up the ERGP Implementation Unit in the Federal Ministry of Budget and National Planning to facilitate the delivery of key execution priorities of the plan.
Implementation is key. We have a lot of very good plans, but the ERGP Focus Lab itself is an implementation tool, because we identified problems and we follow through until we resolve each problem. And then we have the ERGP Implementation Unit that supervises the lab, that is still set up in the ministry, providing the same service, following through each of the steps for the realization of each investment. Each investment, we did a detailed 3-pit plan, from what you do at the beginning to what you do until the end, until you start production. So each of those steps, with timelines, with persons that will be responsible, have been detailed out during the focus labs, and the ERGP Implementation Unit is following up on that.
The annual budgets are closely aligned with this plan, and such that whatever projects or programs you want, a ministry wants to get implemented, must be in line with the aspirations of the plan. If it's not contained or is not in sync with the current plan, the ERGP, it won't even be admitted, as part of the budget. I mean, we've noticed that in other countries, that is how they succeeded. I'll pick that up. I think it's working, because most MDAs have now come to realize that the issue of implementation is very strategic.
The second thing that government has done very right in this process is to build problem solving into the planning process. So irrespective of any changes in the environment, you find out that because government has built problem solving into the plan itself, then government is able to deal with these changes in the environment. One of the limitations of prior plans has been that when the environment changes, because the plan did not exactly building that dynamism into the plan, then government may not be able to react as quickly. But in this plan, implementation is built into the plan, and also, more importantly, that problem solving, dynamic problem solving is also built into the plan. So either way, this is a very, very dynamic plan, and I think if we continue this way, then quite a number of the problems that we face with previous plans will be history.
We carefully selected and identified the constituents, individuals, and entities that have to come into the lab for us to maximize the results coming out of the labs. And going into the labs, we had very clear objectives, which we term those objectives as the true north. For agriculture and transportation sector, we were looking at job creation as a target, the true north, and also driving in investments within the two sectors.
After a meticulous selection process, the Focus Labs brought together all relevant players comprising investors, both domestic and international, subject matter specialists, government officials at both federal and state levels, and other participants and stakeholders to mobilize high-impact investments for large projects that will contribute significantly to gross domestic product and job creation.
This is the way for this country to go, having series of focus labs from time to time, which are sector targeted, because it helps us, first of all, to understand the landscape for agriculture, for instance, and transportation. So we have the global perspective. We came to understanding that at some point in this country, agriculture contributed up to 50% to the national GDP. But we have it declined to about 24%, and our target is to bring it up again. We also understood that 89% of the total sector GDP is contributed by crops production. And we knew that livestock is about 8% contributor. I think fish is about 2%. So this understanding of the landscape help us to understand where we should basically encourage investment, where the low-hanging fruits are, and where we could prioritize. It also helps us to see what we have as a country in terms of exportation.
We broke down the entire power and gas lab into three major work streams. We had the gas, we had on-grid, and we had off-grid. And what we were able to identify was that the challenge wasn't typically technical, really, but more commercial. Because you have a situation where the gas companies are supplying gas to generation companies, and then it's being supplied again to the grid, to the TCN, and then down to the distribution companies, and then to the consumers. And on the reverse side, you then have payment collection then being paid upstream. But the fundamental challenge is, first of all, that when about 14 gigawatts is generated in terms of capacity, only about 7 goes to transmission and about 5 goes to distribution, and an equivalent of 1 is being paid for. And so what then happens is that through the bulk trader NBET, what is being paid is then paid back upwards. So you have more of a systemic challenge within the sector than anything else. So we try to see how we can make the most in terms of the existing investments within the sector, and to ensure that those investments worked.
Inaugurating the labs, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo pointed out that the ERGP focus labs were not meant to replace existing sectoral roadmaps and plans, but rather to identify entry projects to act as showcase to bring back investor confidence to Nigeria.
Our administration fully recognizes that the private sector ought to be the driver of the economy, mobilizing and deploying the bulk of capital required to deliver growth and prosperity. And the role of government should essentially be to create the environment for the private sector to thrive. I'm pleased to note that the labs have been designed to function on that principle. And I must say that we are really committed to this principle, and I want all of those of us who will be participating in these labs to see this as central. We want to listen to what the investors are saying. We want to listen to what the private sector is saying. I want to see in what ways we can bend over backwards to accommodate what they're saying so that we can achieve our objectives.
Our target for this first set of labs was to generate $25 billion or its equivalent in Naira worth of new investments. That was our target. We didn't quite make the target, but we achieved $22.5 billion worth of potential new investments, which we now have to implement. We have to work with those investors to realize those investments over the next 2 years. And I want to explain that when we talk in dollar terms, it is not because those are all foreign investors. In fact, we're targeting a lot of domestic investors, but it's just for the purpose of having a single currency in which we define it. But the majority of a lot of that investment will be domestic investment in Naira, because our target actually is to increase domestic investment, because the ERGP is principally targeted at stimulating Nigerian investors.
On March 13, 2018, the Focus Lab started, and the target was delivering quick and fast results to the citizens by identifying actionable projects, removing roadblocks, and developing an enabling framework for the sectors.
Keying into the PPP arrangement is as a result of our study of the ERGP. So we're encouraging investors, if there is anywhere in my ministry that anybody is holding your file, if there is anything that will at least inhibit your business transaction, please call my attention.
Issues surrounding high interest rates for them to access lending. and others talked about the difficulty in accessing finance for their businesses, particularly agriculture. We all know that to access finance for your business, you have to go through your bank. And your bank will necessarily carry out its own credit analysis to be able to determine the bankability of the project and be able to come up with an assessment as to whether or not it's a project that is good enough for them. To borrow money from a bank and make money and then repay the loan, the rate of interest is very important. And I have at various occasions even stressed the fact that I agree that for you to conduct a successful agricultural business, borrowing money at double digit will certainly not help that business. That you have to be able to access finance at low interest rates.
I'm very encouraged that we really need, that we really have what it takes to get all of the things that we've said we want to get done, and we will do so. It shows there's a lot of remarkable progress, and that working together we can achieve so much. I'm particularly impressed by the level of engagement, the enthusiasm and the interest that has been shown, and especially accepting to lock yourselves up for a number of weeks, in a bid to partner with government to fast-track the growth and development of our country. Indeed, moving forward as a country requires a great level of commitment and patriotic zeal. And I know that this patriotic zeal is so evident. Everyone is talking about what we can do for the country. What is it that we can do to make things work?
One of our most delightful days was holding a whole session with the Minister of Transport and the Minister of State for National Planning, a true lady, a committed Nigerian. Over 3 hours, we spent time looking at issues, discussing the problem, and giving assurances that whatever it is was on the table will be solved for the betterment of Nigeria, not just for us. We took advantage of those kind of situations, and we had solutions that we could report back to our investing partners, our technical partners, and indeed to the rest of the world that we have solved problems.
We have a very wonderful project, a project that will impact on the lives of people in Nigeria and affect the GDP positively and create wealth for people. But it was difficult to even get funds anywhere. Anywhere you go to, people will tell you, oh, they don't believe this. It was difficult, but through the ERGP, I was able to meet with some directors of the CBN. I was able to meet with some top officers from Bank of Industry. And the Bank of Industry has given us guarantee that they are going to fund our project, that we should come. We are in that process now, So the ERGP has in no small way solved most of the problems we had initially, especially funding and documentation.
After 6 weeks, the Ministry of Budget and National Planning held an open day to mark the end of the first phase of the ERGP Focus Labs. It was an opportunity to present the outcomes of the labs.
Senga Farms, through networking in the labs, engaged with another company, Autodex Limited, to gain access to supply of local tractors, hence eliminating the need to import and request for duty exemption. So in the course of the labs, we brought different investors together and they immediately clinched a deal. Land allocation to Nigerian Shippers Council from Sokoto State Government to Motabe Holdings expedited through the lab. A company called Our Collective was able to obtain LOI from the Ministry of Transport to access foreign funding of $500 million by the 5th week of the lab. These are encouraging initial outcomes, but more work is required to ensure that these potential investments unlocked in the labs are fully realized.
The ministry and stakeholders in the sector to discuss why investments in the sector are very tedious and not forthcoming, on how to accelerate critical projects that can fast-track industrialization and create jobs, resolved a number of interagency challenges. The visioning and problem-solving sessions of the labs also taught us, even as a ministry, how to assess investment readiness.
We, as a ministry, achieved a lot from this lab, and were able to unlock some of the challenges we've been having with some of our investors. But in this lab, the quickest win we had was in this area of gold purchase. Before now, we've developed this idea of developing a gold purchase program using a pilot scheme, using KB, involving the central bank, and so on. But in the course of this lab, there is this company, Ken Smith, that wants to set up a refinery. We don't have a gold refinery in Nigeria and not anywhere in Africa except South Africa. It will be the first gold refinery in Nigeria.
We in the Ministry of Agriculture feel particularly grateful to you because for many years now, we have been like a child in a poorly managed orphanage. Our business has been in the hands of smallholders, and that is because I do not want to use the word peasants. Their output has been low, their stress level high, their access to credit almost zero, and therefore Nigeria has actually faced dangers in her determination to feed herself. And so we became dependent on imports and almost non-existent in the export market. That story is changing. In the last 2 years, agricultural exports have risen 180%. And Nigeria is now exporting more than she's importing.
The results that we have so far are extremely encouraging. And according to the concept of focus labs, there's a continuous process of problem solving. And what this means is that over the course of the next weeks and months, we'll still be resolving, we'll still be working, we'll still be unblocking the rest of the more difficult and the more time-taking issues.
It's no longer business as usual.
Vice President Osinbajo at the close of the first set of labs said given the political will of the current administration, which comes from the highest level, government is working to ensure that the promises made in the President's manifesto come to fruition for the people of Nigeria.
It's our aim to make these focus labs a success so that Nigeria can take a transformative step towards sustained economic prosperity and social livability. I'd like to thank everyone again, especially the private sector investors, who spend 6 weeks of their time to help us understand the issues with our regulatory processes and, of course, to have better benefited from this process. Finally, I must commend Senator Udoma, who is the coordinator of this entire enterprise, for his personal commitment to this process. And it is his personal commitment that has brought us this far, no matter how modest he wants to sound. He and the team of experts that he put together, the Permando Associates and their own resource persons, have approached this whole project with passion, with a steady hand, and the resoluteness that is required for the implementations of big dreams such as we have set for ourselves. I want to thank you all for your service. As we stand here today to review the outcome of the ERGP Focus Labs, I must say that we must urge all participants to provide constructive feedback so that we all collectively can benefit from the outcomes of our working together to realize our dreams of building a better business environment for Nigeria and for those especially who invest in this country.
For us, the ERGP worked because
government came up with an environment where discussions were held. The public sector participants understood what the private sector participants were talking about, and vice versa. We understood some of the handicaps the government people were also having. So that's one outcome that was very positive. Secondly, enough time was given to the parties to actually focus on the problems and brainstorm and come up with solutions jointly. Now, once that was established, what the solutions would be, they went the next step of actually putting into action the solutions. So as we speak today, from geometric power, we have the support all the way up to the villa, all the way up to the various ministers, various heads of parastatals that are involved in resolving this problem once and for all.
The labs were able to identify 164 priority projects spread over the 6 geopolitical zones of the country, with a total potential investment worth $22.5 billion and 513,981 jobs by 2020. Of this amount, $10.9 billion worth of private investments are categorized as most ready to go.
For something that we're starting to totally new, for the first time, to have achieved that sort of result is really incredible. To have achieved that amount of potential investment.
Expecting that our growth rate, by the grace of God, by year 2020 should hit 7%. We are targeting for the end of this year 3.5, but we're hoping that by the year 2020 we should be talking about 7%. Our ease of doing business should significantly improve beyond where we are now, and we expect that with the combination of all the strategies encapsulated in the ERGP, we'll be able to have more employment delivered. Many of our youths will come out of unemployment. Our economy will start booming again. Individual efforts through SMEs will continue, will start, and small and medium scale enterprises will come back alive.
There are more labs to come after this first set of labs.
Having this first set of labs having gone so well, we will be doing labs in other areas. We'll be looking at labs in education, looking at labs in health, looking at labs in Nollywood, in various sectors of the economy, to try and make sure that every single sector of this economy benefits from the tool which the labs gives us. That is the ability to bring everybody together in the same place to solve the problems in each sector.
Government, through the Ministry of Budget and National Planning, is focused on leveraging the power of the private sector to place Nigeria firmly on the path of diversified, inclusive, and sustainable growth.